United States. I've just never been to Alaska. I used to travel with the Harlem Globetrotters, so I've seen every inch of this nation, and just like many people across this country, I had started to lose my faith in our political system. Anyone else agree with me? Did you start to lose faith in your political system? I didn't want Trump. I didn't want Hillary. I didn't like my options. Anybody else feel the same way? And all of that changed for me on September 8th of 2019. I had started to hear rumors about a female candidate with military experience. Someone who had been serving our country and serving her community since she was young. I heard she was active, not just in the community, but physically active. She's a surfer, she's a snowboarder, she's an active politician. I thought to myself, I want to know what this person's thinking. I don't want someone who's on their way out to tell me what I should be doing or how I should feel. So it ignited a sense of patriotism in me that I didn't know I had. And that came from Tulsi when I heard her speak in person at a town hall near USC on September 8th. Was anyone else there? Were you there? Yes. It was that day I started paying attention again. I started listening. I started reading not just headlines, but articles. Because in order for us to make a change as a nation, we have to do it together. The only thing that is unchangeably certain is the fact that nothing is unchangeable or certain. John F. Kennedy said that. I read an article that said Donald Trump's going to be impossible to beat now. Impossible is not a fact. Impossible is an opinion. Muhammad Ali said that. And for us, our country cannot be destroyed from the outside. If we falter or lose our freedoms, it's because we destroyed ourselves. So since September 8th, I've been watching Tulsi and her entire camp go across the nation, not just talking to everyone, but listening to everyone. It doesn't matter the age, the race, the region of the country. People are starving to be heard, their voices to be heard. We don't want to be silenced. No one wants to be or live in a divisive country. Am I right? We don't have to agree. That's our right. We get to have different opinions, but we all deserve something better. And I'm pretty sure that's why each and every one of us is here today. Because we all deserve better. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the reason you're here today is the reason I'm here today. It is my honor and privilege to introduce to you, here in the beautiful, majestic downtown, Tulsi Gabbard, ladies and gentlemen.
Aloha. It's good to be back in California. Thank you for coming out. Please help me give a warm thanks to Jay Flats and John Lloyd Young for kicking us off. Republicans, independents, progressives, conservatives, because we're bound together by one thing. We are bound together by one thing, a deep love and care and concern for each other, for our country, and for our future. That's you. That we can have people who voted for Donald Trump, voted for Hillary Clinton, voted for Bernie Sanders, voted for Ron Paul, coming together out of a love of country, not out of a hate for Donald Trump, not out of hate for any one group or another, but motivated by love. And this is what inspires me every single day. That in this people-powered campaign, that we have this diversity of ideas and backgrounds and experiences of people who are heeding the call of those great leaders who have come before us. Jay shared a few very powerful quotes that really remind us the power to bring about the change we need to see lies in our hands. And we will not fall into the traps that are being set by the divisive talking heads on television or the party leaders on both sides who are seeking to tear us apart. And for what? Because they care about you? No. It is about power. It is about greed. It is about influence. It is about selfish interests rather than recognizing their responsibility to you. Their responsibility to think about it, to stay focused on how their actions can have a positive or negative impact on the people of this country. This is both disheartening almost every single day, but also should be hope-inspiring because this causes us to look in the mirror and say, how can I be the change? What action can I take? Remembering President Kennedy saying, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And our country is a representation of us, of who we are. And that is the question and the challenge that is before every single one of you. What message do you want to send to Washington on Tuesday? What message do you want to send about what kind of future you want for yourselves, for your children, for generations to come? That at a time when we are surrounded seemingly by divisiveness and this us versus them tribalistic mentality, fill in the blank, whether it's politics or who you voted for or against or what your profession is or where you grew up, where you came from, the color of your skin, how you worship, if you worship, or whether you watch Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. At such a time in this cancel culture where we've forgotten who we are. That if you dare hear someone say something that might be offensive to you or that makes you angry or that you disagree with, it seems more often than not the easiest to go to action or answer to take is say, silence, cancel, delete your account, I don't want to know you. That's a dangerous thing. It might be easy, it might make you feel better, it might make you feel kind of righteous, but it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing that undermines the very foundation of this country that is rooted in freedom for everyone. Rooted in freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to worship. That freedom means that every one of us has the right to speak, to share our views, to share our opinions, and that we are stronger a nation. When all of us, we stand up for that right, every one of us. And that we treat each other with respect. That even as we may disagree, even as, this happens to me too. Sometimes I'll hear people saying things on TV that drive me crazy. How can you say this? The truth is so obvious. I am willing to lay my life down for that person's right to say those things. This is what our freedoms are all about. Let's not be afraid of it. Not be afraid of having an open and honest discourse and debate about our ideas. Setting aside the superficial barriers that so often stand between us, where if you say, okay, you're a Democrat, therefore you are this. Or if you have an R next to your name, then therefore you are that. If you were a Trump voter, therefore you are this. If you are a voter for this person or that person, prejudging people based on these superficial classifications, rather than recognizing who we really are and giving people the benefit of the doubt to say, okay, maybe I don't like the decision that you made. Maybe I should try to better understand it, better understand you. So as we think about how we heal these divides in this country, this is where we find the answer. The answer is in our hearts. The answer is in our hands. The choices that we make at the ballot box, but also the choices that we make every day. I was meeting with some friends last night in San Francisco and made some new friends, and this was the conversation we were having, that so often there are people who just don't feel safe expressing their opinion in this vitriolic cancel culture. And it made me sad, because this is America. We're supposed to feel free. We're supposed to be able to share our opinions without being concerned about what impact it may have on your job, or what friends you may lose in the process, or what family members may decide to shut you out. Change lies in our hands. And it lies in our ability to treat each other with respect. To follow the example of President Lincoln when he said, I don't like that man. I need to know him better. Think about that. And that is the beautiful thing that I've been so grateful to experience throughout this entire campaign. Where people may come in with preconceived notions, but through the course even of an hour or 2 hour long conversation, kind of start to think about things maybe from a different perspective. You hear from someone who's coming from a different experience, saying, hey, well, what about this angle on that issue? Maybe here's a different solution that you haven't thought of. It's a beautiful thing that we not only need more of in our everyday lives, but this is the spirit of what is necessary in Washington, where we treat each other with respect, and we are inspired by the example of leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, who showed us very clearly that even at a time of terrible divisiveness, with a dark shadow being cast over our country, in his battle for justice, his battle for equality, his battle for opportunity, fighting against poverty, fighting against war, always staying very consistent with the heart of his movement that was centered around the reality that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. And that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. It is this love, or what we in Hawaii call aloha, that has the power to heal our wounds, that has the power to reignite that spark of light that exists in every single one of our hearts, to inspire us to treat each other with respect, to remember that we are all God's children, other for who we are and work together to bring about that positive change for all of us. Really bringing to heart what it says in our Pledge of Allegiance, liberty and justice for all, that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This is our how. How do we do this? And I get asked this all the time when things seem so dark and so dismal. I'm just curious, how many of you are on Twitter? Okay, a handful. The rest of you live better lives. I'm just saying. It's a great way to communicate, but you gotta be careful. There's a lot of toxicity where people feel comfortable saying pretty nasty, hate-filled things on Twitter that they would never say in real life. But even there, on that platform, how do you be the one that brings the light to that conversation? Instead of adding more of that darkness, bringing that light. Seeing how we can shape the direction not only of these conversations, but drive people to themselves to begin to reflect. Saying, what impact am I having on the world? You may not get the immediate response that you hope for. Nonetheless, you drive on. Because we cannot stop here. The work is not done after you cast your vote on Tuesday. You've got your ballot right there. The work is not done after you put that in the mailbox. Thank you. So I start with this message because as we open the conversation, I want to hear what's on your minds. I want to address any lingering concerns that you may have. But I start with this message because this is at the heart of how we move forward. This is what is at the heart of what lights that path forward for us. Yes, the obstacles are great. The challenges are many. Every day we are reminded of how much the DNC and their corporate media partners are trying to silence our voices because they're afraid of the truth. They're afraid of the people's voices. And they're afraid of the change that we seek to bring about that will lead us towards a government of, by, and for the people, wrestling that power from their hands in the government that exists today of, by, and for the powerful elite. You know something is really wrong when as day after day goes on in this campaign, you're seeing people spending lots of money and time and energy to try to line up superdelegates in advance of the convention in Milwaukee to say we gotta be prepared to overrule the voices of the people because we're scared of who they might choose. This is the reality that we're facing. And the magnitude of the obstacles that we have to overcome. But we cannot be dismayed, we cannot be cowed. We just gotta say, all right, we gotta work harder. We gotta speak up louder. Because as we look throughout history, all of the big changes that we've seen in this country have come from we, the people, standing up and making sure that our voices are heard. That's on us. That's on us. And this continues after the election. Because even as we talk about the different ideas and solutions that we want to see implemented, we're dealing with a pretty paralyzed Congress at the moment, who need to be reminded who they work for, and that the decisions that they make can no longer be made in the interests of their best friend, big-time lobbyists who work for Big Pharma or big insurance or private prisons. You can fill in the blanks. But remind them about who has the power to hire and fire them. That's you. That's you. to enact legislation that really will bring about the systemic change that we need to see in every single sector, whether we're talking about ensuring quality, affordable health care for every American, protecting our environment and ensuring clean water and clean air in this country, enacting real criminal justice reform that we have not yet seen in so long, bringing about real comprehensive immigration reform, tackling this homeless crisis that is affecting people all across our country, protecting our environment, transitioning off of fossil fuels, and investing in a clean, green, renewable energy future. All of these things, these aren't just Democrat ideas. These are changes essential for humanity, for all of us. And by staying focused on that, and away from the polarization, is how we bridge these divides in the country and in Congress so we can just get stuff done. We can deliver results, where we can bring about an end to this common refrain that we've heard over and over and over again for too long, that there's just no money. There's no money for education. There's not enough money to pay our teachers what they deserve. There's not enough money to protect our environment. There's not enough money to freaking get masks and testing kits for this coronavirus. Scotland and South Korea and many other countries in between have figured it out, where they've got drive-through stations. If you're feeling a little bit sick, you can go and pull your car up, get your test back, and get the results within minutes. How many testing kits does California have? Like 200 for the entire state? Give me a break. But this is what I'm talking about. We've been told over and over again, there's not enough money to make sure the needs of the people are being served. And yet, where are our taxpayer dollars going? How is it that there's not enough money for the essential things that the people of our country need? They're going to wage these wasteful regime change wars, going and toppling dictators in other countries, following up those wars with nation-building missions. They're going towards this new Cold War with escalating tensions between the US and other nuclear-armed countries like Russia and China, going towards a new nuclear arms race that is being fueled by treaties that are being thrown in the trash that have kept us safe. All of these things are not making us more safe, but they're costing us tremendously in lives. Our men and women in uniform, lives of the people of the countries where we wage these wars, and they're costing every single one of us. The dollars that are coming out of our pockets and that are not going towards serving our national security needs or the everyday needs of people right here at home. This is the change we'll bring about. To bring about an end to these wasteful wars and instead redirect our taxpayer dollars towards serving your needs, the needs of everyday Americans right here at home. This change is within our hands. The choice is ours. We can kick the can down the road, cross our fingers and hope, hey, maybe something will work out somehow, some way. Or we can make that decision now to take action. Not only ourselves, but making sure when you go and cast your ballot on Tuesday that you got a car full of people. Making sure that there's not a single name on your cell phone contact list that you haven't talked to. Making sure you've sent those messages to everybody you know on Facebook. I know some of you got thousands of people on Facebook you can be talking to. Don't think that your voice doesn't matter. Don't stay home and not cast your vote because you think your voice won't be heard. It is the only thing that matters. It is the only thing that can bring about this change. And this is where I am both grateful to every one of you and I am counting on every single one of you to continue to be the fuel behind our people-powered campaign, continue to carry our message out to voters so that they know even with all the corporate media blackouts and smears, even with all of these challenges, it is the voices of the people that will be heard. This is our country. Let's make sure Washington remembers that. This is our country, and it's our future. All right, we've got a couple of microphones here. I want to kick open the conversation. We have 4 mics and runners who will be running around here. Yes, sir, we'll start with you. I think your hand was up first. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to give a quick shout out to Abraham. He definitely has his hands full.
Abraham's my husband, y'all.
What really is prevalent in my head, and that is that that you stay secure in your security, because it seems like when people go against the grain, they run into a lot of feedback to say, and I just want to ask you about that. It concerns me.
Thank you. I get these calls from my dad with the very same concerns. And I appreciate it. It's something that we don't take lightly, that we're very conscious of. We have some security assistants here today, and we're taking precautions. I'll leave it at that. Is that cool? All right. I know you guys got my back anyway, so. Thank you. Yes, sir. Well, one moment. He'll send you the microphone here.
What do you think about our relationship with Saudi Arabia and the fact that they are the real enemy, and but yet at the same time, without them, our whole economy will collapse? Can you describe the relationship, please?
For too long, leaders in our country have bowed to the interests of Saudi Arabia, even to the detriment of our own security and our own interests. As president, that stops with me. We're the United States government, and we have to exercise the kind of leadership, both with regards to countries like Saudi Arabia, with Turkey right now, countries who believe they can act with impunity because of our country's track record in refusing to stand up and say no. Saudi Arabia, I'll mention this briefly, but I want to talk for a moment about Turkey as well, because there's something happening right now that has a very direct risk to all of us. Saudi Arabia, and I've supported legislation to do this, to stop sending them weapons. We have to stop supporting their genocidal war in Yemen that is continuing to this day. Causing the deaths of so many people, millions of people forced to starve and suffer. Understanding Saudi Arabia remains both a direct and indirect supporter of terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and others. They're the #1 exporter of the Wahhabi Salafist ideology that's fueling these terrorist organizations. And we've got to call it out like it is and call for an end to that. What's happening with Turkey right now as a NATO ally, they have started a war with Syria, one they've been waging for a very long time, a little bit in the shadows, a little bit behind the curtains, where they have been directly supporting the very same terrorist groups our troops there are trying to defeat. Yet they're asking the United States for weapons and aid and support, pulling the NATO ally card, escalating this war. Russia has now sent a couple of battleships to Syria, putting us at risk of being forced to enter into a larger war against Russia, the other nuclear-armed country in the world. This is what is at risk here. And the problem with it, this is why strong leadership, based on experience and understanding of national security and foreign policy, is necessary to have in the White House as Commander-in-Chief. To be able to recognize what Turkey is doing and how detrimental an impact it has on our national security, and how the very fact that they're directly supporting Al-Qaeda in Syria, who have control over this city of Idlib. It is a massive betrayal to every single one of us who enlisted in the military after 9/11, to every single American, to every single family member and loved one of first responders and those who were killed on the attacks on 9/11. And yet what we're hearing from the administration are some words of support for Turkey because they're a NATO ally, rather than having the courage and the strength to say no. We will have no part of this war. As a member of Congress, this is something that we will make sure is made clear. But this is one of many examples that point to why this decision that's before you and the country today about who you want to see serve as Commander-in-Chief is so critical. When it comes to decisions like this, and recognizing that foreign policy is domestic policy. That so long as we're continuing to spend $4 billion a month in countries like Afghanistan, that's $4 billion a month. That's not going towards dealing with things like the coronavirus. There are debates happening in Congress about, well, should we appropriate $1 billion of emergency funds or $8 billion of emergency funds to make sure that we get the resources we need to prevent this virus from taking hold here. On the high end of that, $8 billion, that's 2 months in Afghanistan. Nickel and diming for what we need here at home, but turning a blind eye for what we're spending on these wars that don't make us any safer. These are just a few examples of what is at stake and how foreign policy is domestic policy, why this matters to all of us right here at home. Thank you. Yes, please.
Thanks for having this, I appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.
I hope that besides any physical threat, I hope there's nothing like that, but I do appreciate your bravery. There's a lot of things that you've said that inspire me, things that needed to be said. The bravery I'm talking about now is not physical bravery, it's the bravery that you're going to take the lumps for this no matter what happens. So I just want to start with that.
Thank you.
My question is, at some point, to change this, like the military-industrial complex, what are your thoughts on, rank-and-file military deciding not to take orders, which is their right if they believe it's unconstitutional, it's immoral? Like, how do you feel about that? I know what you haven't discussed it. I'm just curious about how you feel about rank-and-file members taking it upon themselves to stop them.
The military is bound to obey legal orders. And every service member has the right to stand up and reject an illegal order. There are a lot more servicemen and women across party lines who take that oath to our Constitution and to support and defend, protect the safety and security of the American people very seriously. And who understand how important it is that they remain loyal to our country and the American people and to the orders that are delivered to them by their commanders and the Commander-in-Chief. I don't want to get our servicemen and women mixed up into the divisive politics of our country. I think it's important that the way this system works is that we bring about that pressure to our political leaders to make sure that those policies, those decisions that they are making, especially as it relates to our troops, are decisions that really honor the great sacrifice that they are willing to make for our country. And they're counting on us to do that. They're willing, along with their loved ones and family members, to make the greatest sacrifices for all of us. The very least that we can do as everyday Americans, as voters, every leader in Washington, our president and commander-in-chief, is to provide that pressure to make those decisions that really do honor their sacrifice.
I was curious about what the conversation around addressing the homelessness crisis in our nation in general and in Los Angeles in particular, what that sounds like.
Thank you. First of all, and without hesitation and without delay, this homeless crisis, as president, I would declare as the national emergency that it is. And here's why that's important. Because even as I've gone and walked through Skid Row and had conversations with people who are without homes, many of them being veterans, many of them single moms, many of them people who have worked hard or even working and still unable to be able to afford a roof over their heads. This is something that is afflicting big cities and small towns, rural communities and urban communities all across this country. And this crisis requires a concerted and coordinated approach by the federal, state, and local governments, partnered with the private sector to be able to address those needs. There are three major ones that we need to look at. The number one driver of homelessness is the skyrocketing cost of housing in this country. Even by federal government standards, when they say, oh, well, we're building affordable housing units, I can speak from personal experience in Hawaii. Something that you might call affordable is not even close, even to those who are working a full-time job or even two. It's recognizing the reality of the fact that nearly 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Just one accident or unexpected expense away from being pushed out on the street. And make sure that those standards, the equations that are used at the government level, are actually matching the reality of what people are experiencing on the ground. And making sure that, I served on the city council before I ran for Congress, that the zoning laws that are in place at the local level are making it possible for us to be able to develop as many of these truly affordable or transitional units that our country really requires. We've got to cut through the red tape, we've got to cut through the bureaucracy, and ultimately address our resources towards three major areas. Number one, a mass development of truly affordable units, whether they're tiny houses or container homes. Let's be creative and see how we can do this. To the many amazing organizations, nonprofit groups, people who have dedicated their lives and their time towards providing mental health assistance, providing help for those who need it, who are dealing and struggling with substance abuse and addiction. In those three areas, by treating this as the emergency that it is and dedicating the resources necessary, we can make an incredible impact in progress towards ending homelessness in America. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Last time I never chance to have a question. I appreciate what you are doing. In fact, I voted already yesterday, and although your chances might be minimal, but I hope you and Bernie together make a good team. I see the greatness yet imperfection in many of the candidates, especially the secular ones. I was at an event that somebody asked, who is the most secular candidate? I thought, the one who dares not to say G plus A. I left the democracy and hope anybody who leads us next has the strongest stand against the spread of Islamic theocracy. While I respect everybody's peaceful faith, I am wondering what we could do in terms of foreign policy to promote separation of state and religion and making human rights of all as prerequisite for lifting sanctions against religious or other dictatorial states. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a few different points in there that you brought up. I think first of all, it's important for us to recognize and respect the freedom of religion in this country and the separation of church and state. But just as for me, in the most deep and personal way, my personal relationship with God is something that I value and treasure and gives me great inspiration and strength and peace every day of my life. For those who may have a different way of worshiping or choose not to worship at all, I completely respect your right to do so. Theocracies are very dangerous. We see how this has had a negative impact in different countries in the world. And we also look back to what the founders of this country were running from and escaping from. I think it's important that we look here in the United States of America about how we not be complacent about these freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, that we make sure that we are upholding them here at home. But I also know that with other countries in the world, it is not our place to go in and tell them, well, you have to create a little mini America in your country. As much as we may disagree with their governments or their laws. Yes, ma'am, I missed you earlier.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.
I would like to make a statement and ask a question.
Okay.
First, Loka samasta sukhi bhavantu. May all beings in all realms everywhere be happy and free. I appreciate you being a voice for so many, for those who don't have voices, and for those of us who struggle to hold on to ours. I had a traumatic brain injury that affected my ability to speak. I was a public speaker, performance artist, singer, fierce advocate for civil rights, the rights of all life, the life of animals, our sentient beings. I am a 48-year-old woman who has been living a holistic, vegan life since I was 12. My heart breaks over our inability to collectively own a consciousness. Not just about whether we eat animals, but how we treat sentient beings' life. I am here with my service dog, Jasmine. Jasmine is a pit bull terrier. This dog is the most gentle being on the planet. She will overwhelm you with her love, She is a lover, not a fighter, a kisser, not a biter. Jasmine, down, stay. She serves love. My life, since a young woman in my church, involved in missionary outreach, then in my service in the National Rapid Response Corps, to serve in disaster relief and teaching, health, education, those needing immediate emergency care in times of disaster. And I am a member of the LGBTQ community. And my voice has been silenced. My life and my love has been up for legislative debate. My rights. And I fought for them. I stood on the Mormon temple in 2008 with my peace flag, preaching a message of love. Because I believe that truth and love always win. I believe in you, Tulsi. I believe in your message. Sincerity. I authentically love you. I see you, sister. I see your heart. I struggle every day to remember the authenticity of who I am, a child of love and light and peace. I am here to serve selflessly. I have since I was a very little girl, rescuing fledgling birds falling from their nests with my dear mama's help. I know what it is like to serve selflessly. And when I became injured at work in 2008, I was left with a permanent disability that has altered the course of my life in a way that challenges me to lovingly, compassionately, be gentle with myself through this process, because not only am I vegan and a fierce advocate for love, I love my temple. I was an extreme athlete, and my body has changed in a manner that makes it so I daily must radically accept this new normal. And although I try and have fought for my rights and fiercely fought for the rights of others, my rights, the taxes I have paid to support those of us who are confronted with unfortunate circumstances that leave us in chronic pain or in disability of varying degrees. As recent as 2 nights ago, I was harassed by a medical doctor who mocked my speech impairment, and I am only here but by grace. Tulsi, I would be homeless for listening to